And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, right to your host of this House of Musicians, Barry Smith.
Hey, good evening, fine listeners, and welcome to this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101. We hope you enjoy the next hour with us as we do our small part to help promote musicians, bands, and venues. Gary LaBarge, our guest, doesn't need any promotion at all tonight. How are you, Gary?
I'm fine. I'm very excited. You know, we have a little bit of, I'll say it, a little bit of royalty and history here. So this is going to be very exciting.
Yes, we're absolutely stoked to have Mr. Bernie LaBarge on the show this evening. In a wide-range career that began in '67, Bernie signed with WEA Records, and released a single entitled "Dream Away" in 1981. Bernie earned a Canadian Juno Award nomination in 1984 for Most Promising Male Vocalist of the from the album Barging In on the Sony label. Then Bernie won Canadian Songwriter Contest in '86, Best R&B Song category. His song "Dream Away" was produced by famous producer Daniel Lanois. "Dream Away" was one of the most played songs, get a load of this, Gary, one of the most played songs of 1981 and still receives extensive airplay.
Nice.
So, of course, I can go on to mention that along the way, Bernie has been the guitarist frontman for many popular bands like Sweet Blindness, Stingray, the Irish Rovers, Cassandra Vax, the Dexters, George Oliver Band, and has recorded worldwide with the Irish Rovers, Doug Wiley, Ian Tyson, David Clayton Thomas, Rhinoceros, Long John Baldry, and he proudly performed with the Hall of Famers, Demonic Triano, Ronnie Hawkins, John Kay, John Sebastian, David Cassidy, and just recently with Alex Lifeson from Rush. Holy smokes, Bernie, it's amazing to have you. How are you?
Who is that guy? I'm going to get off the phone right now and go look him up. Who is I can't believe what you just said there. That's amazing. Well, it's very nice to be with you, Barry. You scared me at the beginning here when you go, and Gary LaBarge, and I'm going, oh no, is that how you?
Oh no,
Gary LaBarge. That's weird, right there.
Yeah, almost the same name.
It is very similar. Is that your band playing the theme song there, Barry?
It is, yeah. That's a song I wrote. I wrote the music for it. I played the guitar on it, and my friend Josh Hinnon sang it. So we sat down together one day and wrote that, yeah.
That sounds like a Steppenwolf tune.
Well, you know, Steppenwolf, one of my favorite bands, John Kay, so many albums they have, and absolutely always loved Steppenwolf and John Kay.
Oh, well, you sound like that's like goddamn the Pusher Man. Like, I mean, that was amazing.
Well, coming from you, that's quite the compliment. Thank you.
Anyway,
that's amazing.
Yeah, great.
Well, like I said, it's an honor to have you. I want to thank our dear friend up in Barry's Bay, Dave Parkins, for reaching out to you and getting you on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.
And what a talented musician he is in his own right.
He certainly is.
And you say that you went to school with him. You've known him since you were how old?
14, probably. But we went to high school together, yeah.
14. Well, let me tell you, we see Uncle Dave. We call him Uncle Dave. We see him up in Barry's Bay every season because we spend a weekend with our riding group up there, and Dave comes down and says hi and whatnot and hangs out. So thank you, David.
Great guy to hang out with, for sure.
He sure is. Bernie, let's start at the beginning. How were you influenced by music when you were younger? Did your parents, were they musicians? Did your older brother have a vinyl collection that you used to listen to when he wasn't around? Or how you were influenced by music? Let's make it a two-part question, my friend. Who were you influenced by back in the days when you were young?
Well, if you want to start with my family, I've got 3 sisters and me, so I don't have any brothers, but I've got my dad, who was a great singer and really great purveyor of music in general. Like, he had a good collection of old, movie soundtracks and old French stuff. He's a French Canadian guy, so I got to hear Maurice Chevalier, and then I would hear South Pacific. He turned me on to Les Paul. He turned me on to Alvino Ray. some of these seminal guitar players who were using effects before anybody even knew what effects meant. And my mom, fantastic singer, and my biggest fan. And then I've got my oldest sister, Marilyn, who is, she's born in 1945. So she was a crazy record collector listener. So I got to hear just the end of Elvis, and then she got heavy into Motown. And I listened to Motown for hours and hours on end. And then the Beatles showed up, and my next sister-in-law, Gail, born in 48. So she was the Beatles freak. So that's when I latched on, because that's when I was 11 years old when they came out. So that's when I got my guitar. So my family, they are a musical family, nobody went into the business or anything. They're all smarter than I am, but this is, it was a good thing. Lots of music around the house all the time, and tons of tape recorders and old radios and stuff. So yeah, great place to grow up in as far as a musical sense, for sure.
Absolutely. And
was there
it's really amazing.
To that question?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Bernie.
I didn't know if there was a second part of that question or if I answered both of them.
I think you answered both. I asked you who you were influenced by and how you got into music. You said the Beatles, and I was going to mention that it's amazing, 90 shows later, 87 shows later or something, how many artists we have on the show, which I never realized till I started this show a couple of years back, how the Beatles influenced so many artists.
Oh, it's immeasurable. The guitars nobody was even buying guitars. I hardly, until the Ed Sullivan Show. So that was, at least for people my age group, I was born in 53. So I was, 10, 11 or whatever when they showed up, and perfect age to just kind of figure out what you're going to do with your paper route money. And that's what I do, rather than buy hockey equipment.
There you go. Yeah. Music over hockey. What was your first guitar and how did you get it? Do you remember?
Wow. Most of my guitars my dad bought. Are you kidding? But it would be like, first one was a K acoustic, was when I learned for the short amount of time that I took formal lessons. And then I had a Kent, my two pickup, my Kent Electric, which I still have. And
amazing.
I played that in my first couple of bands, and then I got a Hagstrom, and then now I have a collection. And getting back to Dave Parkins, he says that you've got about 100 guitars or something, so you're doing okay.
Yes, and still collecting them. Yes, just since COVID started, I got into, I guess, the last couple of years since COVID started. That was my new hobby, collecting guitars. So I've got a few, indeed.
Way to go! Yeah, well, it's a great hobby to pursue. So, and then anyway, so I've still got my Kent. I don't have the K acoustic, but I've got the first electric. I have the first amp, and I've got my Hagstrom. That was my first real guitar that I got over a Telecaster, which I wanted to get because of Dominic Troiano. His name is bound to come up at some point, so we might as well get into it now. So
let's do it.
Yeah, so Troiano, in the Mandala, when I saw them, it was like I have to get a Telecaster. So I was, probably 2 or 3 years into playing at that point, so I knew some things on the guitar, and my dad drove me into Hamilton to Waddington's music store, and I had my mindset on a Telecaster that I'd been ogling in the window. And so I picked up the Telecaster. The guy handed it to me, whatever, and I played a little bit of it. And the guy went, "Your hands aren't all that big." He says, "I got something that might be better for you, actually." So he picks up this Hagstrom, which anybody that knows what a Gibson 335 looks like, which would be, if you've ever seen B.B. King play, it kind of is like that. And, the nice big guitar with the F holes in it. Anyway, this
hollow body. Yep.
Yeah, semi-hollow. Yeah. So the Hagstrom had still to this day probably the best neck I've ever played on a guitar. So I still have that. So anyway, I ended up, like, all my friends knew I was going into Hamilton with my dad, and I was going to come back with a Telly, right? So I ended up with this Hagstrom, and they go, "What the heck is that?" LaBarge. So anyway, I really had to put my foot down to say, look at, I want to learn how to play the guitar. I don't want to be struggling, like it's hard enough to learn as it is. So anyway, my hands finally grew up, and I'm good enough with a Telecaster now, but I still love the Hagstrom.
Absolutely, and they're fabulous guitars, and they look beautiful. Yeah. So how did you learn how to play? You're 11, you had a guitar. What were you learning? Were you learning Beatles riffs? Who were you inspired by to learn guitar stuff?
Well, of course I wanted to play just like George Harrison. He was the one of the Beatles that I singled out. I wanted to be him. And so I really liked the way he was standing back from the guys in front and just throwing in all these wonderful little parts that seemed to be the memorable parts of the song musically to me, over and above the singing and everything, right? So he was the one that was throwing in all the neat little ear candy stuff. So I wanted to do that. And so I took lessons for, I think, probably 6 months. I learned the notes on the guitar and, a couple of little exercises. And then when they got to an Italian song called Santa Lucia, which is quite a traditional Italian song. And when it got to that stage in the Mel Bay course, I decided, because Satisfaction had just come out probably the same week that the page turned and Santa Lucia was looking me in the face, I decided that I would stop the lessons and start playing by ear, because we had a piano in the house. And so my sisters both took piano lessons, and I would sit down in the basement as a little kid and watch them struggling with their lessons and stuff, and watch them get all frustrated and run upstairs. And then I would get over to the piano and I would figure out what they had learned, and then so they'd come down and beat me up and all that stuff, which is normal and acceptable in my house. And so that's what happened. So my ear was always definitely in the mood to learn. So I taught myself, and I went and saw great guitar players, and I stood in the front row and took mental pictures of what they were doing, and I would try to remember at least one thing and run home, or I'd take the bus because I heard some guy in Burlington knew a chord that I'd never heard the name of before, and so I'd bang down his door and find out what the chord was and get on the bus and go home. I love I love those.
That's just too cool.
Way cooler than now. It's way too easy to learn now.
Well, that's the thing I always mention on the show, the technology nowadays with YouTube videos and whatnot. There's 8-year-old kids that can play as good as Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, and Bernie LaBarge. It's just so easy to learn now.
That's right. They just don't have that. There's a little bit of something in there that they still got. Some of them still have it, but some of them still have to work on it. It's not all about speed,
Agreed. I'm on a few guitar Facebook groups, and there's a lot of guys posting how fast they can play the guitar. Yeah. For me, it's so much more important to be a good songwriter and play your guitar. And if you're not a songwriter, then play your guitar with finesse and style than it is to be, screaming up and down the notes that you can barely make out what's going on. So I agree with you on that.
Well, when I play, I find it like I'd rather watch somebody play fast. I might get more enjoyment out of it than they actually do, because I don't know, it's hard to throw feel in when you've got no spaces in between the notes. So it's hard to insert a little bit of soul in there, so it's more like exercises. But so then it's a whole different thing. Then you get into using effects pedals and stuff that add the lacking of the soul and make it sound great. So
agreed. Let's talk about this, Bernie. Huh? I agree 100%. Let's talk about this. This is so exciting. In 1967, you signed with WEA Records and released a single entitled Dream Away.
Well, I wish that was 1981.
I'm sorry, and that was in 1981, and you earned a Canadian Juno Award nomination in 1984 for Most Promising Male Vocalist of the album. Your album called Barging In on the Sony label. Talk to me about how you found out you were nominated for a Juno and what was going through your mind.
I was living in Stouffville at the time, and my neighbor from two doors down, Barb Kane, worked for WIA, I think, yeah. And so she phoned me up and she said, "Congratulations." And I went, "What are you talking about?" Because I thought it was congratulating me for, making it home the night before. I have no idea. Anyway, it was like, "What are you talking about?" She says, "You were just nominated for a Juno Award." And I just about fell over. Like, I wasn't even in my brain that was going to happen. So that was an exciting time.
No doubt it was an exciting time.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess it would be equally as exciting to hear your song on the radio. Like, tell me about that.
The first time that I heard Dream Away on the radio, and, you've heard bands say, like, the first time you hear your song on the radio, like even Paul McCartney saying that, they're listening to the transistor radio when Murray the K is playing their songs the first time they come to the States. But it is an amazing feeling to think, like, because I could picture myself recording it and writing it and everything that it became. And it was amazing. So, pardon me. And it's a funny story about that song, because I was like, all I did after I knew that the record had been released, like getting the record deal was a whole other thing. And that was awesome too. So I after I knew the record had been released by WIA, all I would do all day long was, sit in my car and just roll the dial from left to right on the radio, waiting to see if I could hear anything. And then one time I'm going, wait a minute, I think I just passed something there. And I did. And there's my song on the radio, right? So it's CKOC from Hamilton. And I think it was Scott Harris was the DJ. So he gets off playing the record, and he's with a guy named Pete Daly. They used to do a duo DJ thing, and they were hilarious. So he goes, and that was a song by Bernie LaBarge. And then Pete Daly goes, "Oh, Bernie LaBarge, LaBarge," all this stuff. So they all of a sudden start doing this routine about my name. So they would play like 4 songs, and then they'd go, "Well, that was a song by so-and-so." And, Pete Daly would go, "Well, it wasn't as good as Bernie LaBarge," so anyway, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought I was on Punk'd or Candid Camera or something, right? So I looked up CKOC, and I said, "I got to speak to Scott Harris or Pete Daly, because it's Bernie LaBarge on the phone." And when I got on the phone, they just about died, because for all they knew, I was from Finland. They didn't know. They just got a record in the mail, right? So
right.
Me to actually phone them up and go, it was me. So then I ended up getting in my car and driving down to the station that day, and we did like a couple hours together, and they played my song like every 5 minutes and whatever. So it was like it was amazing, because it was in Hamilton, and that's where I recorded the song. And it was just, the whole thing was just a beautiful, once in a lifetime kind of a right place at the right time thing.
Yeah, like so many musicians, right place at the right time, and hard work. There's a lot of hard work involved too. Luck is a factor, but you have to work hard. I've talked to so many artists on here that's what they do day and night is email. There's so much more to the business. They email and they send out stuff, and they work so hard to become successful.
Well, it's a different world out there now with social media and whatever. But when I was doing it, it was more like write, record, and knock on doors and try to get an A&R guy to listen to your record, and network with people, go out to the bars and go see bands and blah, blah, blah. It was all done personally. It was not anonymous like it is nowadays. So there was a lot of legwork involved, and hard work is hard work. I'm not saying I worked harder. It was just a different way of working, but hard work does not guarantee success. And sometimes it falls right in your lap, as you can definitely tell from listening to the radio now, because it's a lot of people
absolutely
definitely falling in their lap.
Well, yeah, and not to knock any musicians that are successful, but sometimes I have to shake my head and go, how the heck did that get on the radio? But that's just
exactly just what I'm talking about, yeah. So
I have
came back in the 60s. No, well, it was the same back in the 60s. I mean, like there were songs that came out, or, even if you'd buy an album back then, there's some band would have an amazing song, and then you'd buy the album and the rest of the songs were absolute trash, right? So it's the same type of thing, they got lucky, and they had nothing more into it. And that's another reason why a lot of artists, you'll find that their first albums are their best. I'm not including the Beatles or Zeppelin, or there's some people that definitely prove me wrong there, but a lot of people, because you've spent your entire lifetime, you've had all that time to put together your first record. And then if you get a deal and you get a hit, then all of a sudden it's time to write like under pressure,
Yeah, they want more stuff.
Different vibe altogether, and especially if they want you to write a song exactly like the one that was the hit before, which is kind of a bummer. So,
like what happened with the Guess Who, Burton Cummings. They wanted another. They wanted another. They came out with a what's the word I'm looking for? A soft song, a ballad. They came out with a ballad, and the record company wanted a second ballad right away. They didn't want to do it, but they did it. I think it was These Eyes, and then that was it. After the second ballad, they were on their way.
Absolutely. Yes. And that was Jack Richardson was a big fan of theirs, their producer, and he steered the record company in the right direction. So it was a lot of that was Jack's doing. It was
excellent. There you go.
Jack being right there. Jack Richardson being one of the nicest people and sort of a second father to me. So I did tons of work with Jack. So a real neat guy.
Yeah, well, like I said, I just learned something new about Jack right there. Let's do this. I have an interesting email I want to read to you, but I'm going to wait till after we play this song. Okay. It's a very cool email. I'm going to leave you guessing to see if you can figure out who it is. But first, Bernie, let's play your single from 1984, which was released in '83 on your album Barging In. Uh-huh. Let's play your song "Overnight Sensation." I'd love to come back and talk about it.
May I preface that just shortly with a little?
Please do.
This song.
Please do.
I have the masters for this album, Barging In. So I have had all my 2-inch tape digitized, and I'm in the process of remixing, not just remastering this album, but remixing the album. So some of them don't need anything. Some of them used a little bit of help. But anyway, this Overnight Sensation, this is a remix, and by the help of my buddy Dave Tedesco, and let me just think about that, and Mike Duncan, and my mastering guy, whose name is J.K. Northrup. He lives in L.A., so there's a bit of a teamwork thing going on there. And so enjoy. If you own my album, you'll hear the difference when you hear this version of Overnight Sensation. So carry on there, Barry.
Yes, my friend. And we also mentioned earlier, we talked before the show about how the new technology that we have compared to back in the day, even in the 80s, how the new technology can just make everything burst now when you remix.
Whole different world. Yep.
Whole different world. Folks, I have the amazing, probably definitely one of the best guitar players ever, Mr. Bernie LaBarge, on this evening's show, and we're going to hear his song from 1984, a single from 1984 off his album Barging In. This song's called Overnight Sensation, right here on this House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.
The crowd, so I played the grand
Hey, welcome back, fine listener. We have the wonderful guitar player Bernie LaBarge on tonight's show, this episode, and we've just listened to his song Overnight Sensation. Bernie, tell me about the song and how you became to write it and record it.
Okay. Well, I was, let's see, I was getting ready to do an album because Dream Away had already been out, whatever. So I was just stockpiling tunes. And I think I got the, let me think of, did I get the music first? I think I wrote the lyrics first for that song. And it was just about my trials and tribulations and trying to make it in the business. And it's, odd. You can tell I was 13 years of exploitation. I didn't just use that for a rhyme. It was 13 years. So if I was, I was probably 27, 28 when I wrote that song. So I could add a few more numbers onto it now, but it's basically a story of my little travels. That's all. And what I was going through at the time, quite harmless.
Yeah, absolutely. Great song, good feel. The production's amazing. Now, this is the original because it's not completely mixed yet, correct?
No, that's the remix. That's remixed.
That's the remix.
Yeah, that's remixed by Mike Duncan and remastered by J.K. Northrup. Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful and great song,
Thanks,
Bernie.
buddy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, what I want to do now is read you this email that I have here, and I'm going to see if you can guess who it is. He says, I have known Bernie since he was 14 years old. I am a drummer from Burlington, Ontario. Please ask him what band gave him his first job at the age 14 in Burlington, and does he remember the original name of the band and what our new name became? We were one of the more popular bands from our city in the mid to late 60s.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, I truly believe that Bernie's become one of the best guitar players of Canada. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Any idea? You were 14 and you joined the band from Burlington.
Well, yeah, crap. Well, that could be, the underground taxi service down in Gary Goodwin's basement, but I'm not sure if we changed our name before that or after that, because I can't remember the name before that, but it was the underground taxi service. But if it's a 14, unless it's Dave Oldham, and it's like it was in the Royal Bank. Oh, I know who it is. It's Dave Clure, probably.
You got it. You got it.
Dave
right on.
Clure.
Man.
Sorry, Dave. Of course, it's Dave Clure. Yes. Yes. Well, Johnny Johnson, still one of my best friends to this day, was the rhythm guitar player and vocalist for a great band called the Royal Bank that came out of Burlington back in the day, and the Royal Bank with an E on the end of it. And so anyway, I was in a basement band called the Underground Taxi Service, and underground and basement, good idea. So anyway, we didn't do gigs, but we were just basically learning how to play. It was my first time playing in a band kind of thing. And then Johnny was going out with the girl across the street from me, and I don't know if she had heard me playing in the garage or something and asked him to go and check me out or whatever. But anyway, Johnny ended up down the basement with me playing with these guys one day, and I was blown away because Johnny was a rock star to me, and he also had a career in TV and stuff, right? His dad was an opera singer, and Johnny used to do jingles and commercials on TV and stuff. So I digress. So anyway, Johnny scouted me out from that band, and I became from the basement there at 14, and I was brought into the Royal Bank and groomed, and got my first manager and our first photo shoot and a truck, my own amplifier, roadies, like Bone and all you guys who are probably listening right now, and Ron Anderson, who became after but all our friends and neighbors that I don't know why my back is sore now, because it should have been broken without the help of those guys. So anyway, that's how that works. So hi, Dave Clure.
Absolutely, and thank you for the email. I have one more email here. This is from Claude L. And Claude said, just wanted to say hello from Mission, BC. Bernie rocks. Cheers.
There's another one of our road managers. When I was in a band called Rain in 1972, and that was
amazing.
unbelievably great band. We were based out of Kitchener, and Charity Brown, who was going by a different name at that point, Phyllis Brown, but Charity Brown was in that band, and we discovered Steely Dan together. We were a really, really, really good band. So anyway, Claude was the guy that had the pleasure of lugging Hammond B3 up 6 flights of stairs and stuff. So hi, Claude. Thanks for staying up, because he said I was cutting into his nap time if he was going to watch this show. So thanks, Claude.
Yeah, and you know what? It's always wonderful to have these people email in and reach out to you after all these years.
That's
30,
fantastic.
40, 50 years ago. It's amazing.
Oh, forget about it. It's just crazy. Yeah, well, I'm blushing right now. It's amazing. I love it.
I want to ask you about the best jam you think you've ever played in. The best jam.
Best jam. I've been in so many excellent jams in my life. I'm going to say one, and it's only because it was like an all-star jam, but it doesn't take away from all the times I jammed down in the basement at Middle Earth Coffee House in Burlington and all the other places I've jammed. But, I when I was in the Dexters, we were the house band at the Orbit Room for 10 or 15 years, and Lou Pamani, our leader, he lined us up with some really superb gigs. And one of them, we were the house band for the 1996 Juno Hall of Fame Awards. And so we got to be on stage with and jam with at the final finale. We're on stage jamming with like Michelle Phillips and Denny Doherty, John Sebastian, Zal Yanofsky, David Clayton Thomas, Roy Kenner, George Oliver, John Kay from Steppenwolf. And I don't know if I'm missing anybody because it's kind of ingrained in my brain, because it was one of those nights that if I'd been hit by a bus right after it, it would have been fine. Because
what a lineup.
I never in my life dreamed that jam was going to happen. But, it's just, there's other jams too that depending on where you were and how you were feeling at the time, they were great too. But as far as a high profile, holy moly kind of jam, that one sticks out.
Absolutely. I mean, the name, just the names you're saying there that you played with, inspirational. Good for you. That's amazing. I want to ask you, Bernie. Good for you, buddy. That's just amazing. And these are highlights in your life that you'll never forget. So that's a beauty thing, about looking back on this stuff as well. So. Oh
yeah. I'm a band fan, like, as well as being a musician. I'm a music fan. So I can bother rock stars just as much as a regular fan can, because like I like to know questions and tidbits. I learned a lot of my licks just by, knocking on dressing room doors in between sets and asking the guitar player how he did stuff. Like I had no buffer. Like I needed to know stuff, and that was the only way to do it. Like email him. It wasn't around that. So.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying. I'm a big fan of musicians as well, and I've heard lots of people say when you're around these guys, they're so used to having fans bugging them all the time. Just be cool and be like you're them. And I'm just like, I can't do that. I need to ask for their autographs. And
yeah, there's a fine line. Yeah, there's a fine line.
There's definitely a fine line. There's no question about that. I want to ask you, Bernie, about your writing process. For me, nowadays, when I write a song, I will put a couple of riffs on my phone for my guitar, come back to it maybe a couple of weeks later and turn it into a song. If I still like it, I probably have a few hundred or 100 or 200 riffs on my phone that I come back to. And if I like them, I usually have the melody first and write the songs later. How about your writing process?
It's sort of been on hiatus for a while now because I've been head first into the remixing of stuff. So I'm kind of in the producer mode at this point. So as far as like, I'm more like arranging stuff now. I'm pulling things out, adding things like that. So I'm thinking in those terms rather than starting a song from start to finish. But I've got a great writing partner, Brent Barkman. I was in a band with him called the Stickmen. And we wrote all the time, and we would play originals all the time, and they were really cool stuff, like New Orleans kind of stuff. So, but back in the day, like my styles have changed over the years, like because I've never really locked myself into one thing, but I would say like it might start out with a drum groove. It might start out with I'll hear a lick on some song, and then I'll reverse it and see what that sounds like, and okay, there's a good start for that. Or I'll think of a couple of lyrics and go from there. Like just everything's made up. So I have no hard set rules, and I wrote most of my album on piano, and it was weird because I'm a guitar player, but I found the challenge of writing on an instrument I wasn't familiar with to be a much more inspirational, because I could work out a chord on my right hand and then just fart around with my left hand and move the bass notes around, and then invent chords that way. So that was fun.
Absolutely. No, good for you. And like you say, you've been enthralled in mixing this album that you've had barging in, and now so you're not doing a whole bunch of writing at the moment, no. But I'm sure you'll get back to that.
It's possible. Yeah, we'll see. Like it depends on, how the COVID comes out and whatever. It's not really profitable to, and I don't write just for money, but I'm not as inspired as I used to be. Like, it's kind of, it's weird.
I hear you.
Yeah, it's weird out there. So, I'm kind of in, just trying to survive day to day like everybody else.
Absolutely. We have another email here. This is from Todd A. And Todd said Bernie was the best softball pitcher in Burlington before becoming an awesome musician. So now we know that you were also a great softball pitcher too.
Good old, that's Todd Allison, who was an incredible softball pitcher too. So yes, I had a career as a hotshot fastball pitcher back in the day when I was a little kid. But yes, I loved that. And it just, everything stopped for guitar at one point. So.
Yeah, and thank you for that email, Todd. Like I said, it's great
for sure.
To reach out
Thanks,
to you.
Todd.
I have one more email. I want to play another song of yours, but let me just read this email real quick too. Let me see if you can guess. Great to hear my old friend on my 70th birthday chuckled at the Royal Bank reference. I took the promo pictures back then. Great show this evening. All the best. Gordon Cotton.
That's Gordon Cotton. This is when I told you. That's my first manager. Like, but that wasn't in the Royal Bank. Oh, God, Grant Patterson was my first manager in the Royal Bank. Sorry, Grant, R.I.P. But anyway, no, Gord was our manager in STEM for about a half an hour or whatever. But anyway, Gord, great guy. He lives out in the East Coast now. I haven't seen him for ages, but he was an incredible photographer. So he took our first promo shots of the Royal Bank. So anyway, and Gord also was at the Jimi Hendrix concert in 1968 at the Coliseum Hamilton, which is now the Ricoh Center. And he took some shots of Hendrix that blow your mind. So he's still looking for the rest of that roll, but I've got a couple of shots he rolled off that night, and they're safe and sound at my house. So anyway, thanks for listening, Gord. Nice to hear from you, pal, and happy 70th birthday.
Yeah, just so cool that these people are reaching out, and so cool to be taking pictures of Hendrix. Let me just give you an update from David Kluwer. He said the original band that Bernie joined before were called the Royal Bank was the Fair Measure. The Fair
Measure. I thought it was called the Better Half. The Fair Measure. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember that, but there you go. I thought it was called.
Hey, how can we expect to go back so far, Bernie? All the way back to that time and remember.
I wasn't in the band, so why should I care, right?
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah. Bernie, let's play another song here. Sure. This one's called Nancy, Nancy, and I think this was released April 12th, 2014, correct?
That is true. And this song, now this song originally was recorded by Jack Richardson at Fanshawe College with I'll remember the name in a minute. I'm just drawing a blank here. So he's going to kill me for this. But anyway, Jack Richardson produced it, and we got Charlie Cooley on drums and Russ Boswell on bass, and the late great Billy McCauley on Hammond B3. So we wrote this, or I wrote this, and brought it to London because we were going to do a little symposium for the students, the recording students. And I was like, okay, anyway, I'll have the name of this guy in a minute. But anyway, so we did that, and then years go by, and I got the masters for that, and it was time to remix that. So I had Jack's son, Garth Richardson, who is a world famous producer. He produces like heavy-osity duty bands, like big, loud Pantera type bands, right? So I said, okay, here's a rock tune, go for it, right? So he remixes. So this is done by, originally produced by Jack, remixed by his son Garth, like lucky me, you know? So, and play it. And by the time you get back, I'll tell you who engineered it, because I will remember by then.
Absolutely amazing, folks. I have Bernie LaBarge on tonight's program, and we're going to hear his song, Nancy, Nancy, again, released April 12th, 2014, on this House of Musicians radio show, right here on Reality Radio 101.
Sister will. So I went up there this morning on needles and pins. I knocked until my fist bled, but she wouldn't let me in. I wish someone would answer, but there ain't no reply. If there's a God in heaven, I wish he'd let me come inside, so I could say, Nancy, Nancy, look what you've been missing. You stand there screaming while sissing me a kissing. Mercy, mercy, where did you come from? The last time I saw you, you were chewing bubblegum. I've been away so long, I barely recognize the place. Well, I might be bad with numbers, but I can't forget your face. The years have hurried faster than a shopper on a spree. Forget about your sister, but please remember me. I'll take you from me here, Lord. Thank you for the help, but don't you stray too far away, 'cause I can't do it by myself. Nancy, Nancy, look what you've been missing. You stand there screaming while sissing and kissing. Consider all the options, consider all the fun. You heard the man say 2 hands are better than one, so let's talk about it. Nancy, Nancy, look what you've been missing. You stand there screaming while sissing and kissing. Mercy, mercy, where did you come from? The last time I saw you, you were chewing bubble gum. Nancy, Nancy, look what you've been missing. You stand there screaming while sissing and kissing. Consider all the options, consider all the fun. You heard the man say 2 heads are better than one.
Hey, folks, welcome back to this House of Musicians radio show. We have the amazing Bernie LaBarge on the show this evening, and we just heard Nancy. Nancy, wow, buddy, just killer guitar playing, killer vocals. Tell me about this song, bud. Tell me a little more about it.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, before I forget, it's Don Geppert from Fanshawe that engineered that song. That's what happens when you mention too many names. You always forget one. So,
of course.
Yeah, so about Nancy, well, I don't know. I remember I was living in Stouffville back in the day when it wasn't cool to live in Stouffville, and reading a lot back then. And I decided to pull out an old fuzz tone that I hadn't played in years and years and years, and I cranked her up and just started playing some old rock and roll on it. So anyway, I got the music part for that together in a few minutes, and had an old Fostex 4-track tape recorder thing. So I put down that track and then just started humming along to it. And then I got the melody, and then I made up a story and made up a name, and the rest is history.
Just a song. Just a real groovy song.
I love that groove. I think it's a groovy song too. And thank you very much. It rocks. It does.
It sure does.
Part of that, it's a good rock
and so commercially mainstream. It's just
I thought so. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I tried to shop that to. Oh, what'd you say?
No, go ahead.
I tried to shop that to Paul Rogers from Bad Company. I went to Casino Rama to see him play, and I brought along a MP3 and I gave it to his sound man, and I'm sure it's in his sound man's collection right now because I don't think it ever made it. I wanted to hear him sing that. I wrote it with him in mind, actually, except for the Nancy.
It would very fitting for Paul Rogers, indeed.
Thank you. I'm glad you're a songwriter. You can hear that. So there you go. Thanks.
Absolutely. I got a couple more emails, and I don't want to ignore anybody.
I don't
this
either.
one says, Hi, Bernie. You remember Jimi Hendrix and Music Village? Love and cheers from Alan and Gail, Brooks, Alberta.
Oh, for God's sake, do I remember? So this is Alan Nelson, who's this English guy that came over back in 67 and ended up in our high school. And he brought over the first copy of Are You Experienced album. Like it wasn't released in Canada yet, right? So there was a music store in Burlington, which I could do 5 shows with you about. It was called Music Village, just a little record store, but I spent most of my high school years in that store listening to records, thanks to Ed McCready, the proprietor extraordinaire. And so Alan Nelson brought this record over, and, whatever, the rest is history with that too. He lent me the record, and I borrowed it, and whatever. There's another story that goes along with that, but this is only so long. But Alan, thank you so much. I'll never forget you for lending me that album, and Jimi Hendrix will always live on in my psyche. That's for darn sure. And you gave me an early start for it. So thank you very much. And Happy New Year to you, buddy.
And he started off the email with I don't want to forget that. AYE. So there you go.
Well, that means AYE. Are you experienced?
There you go. Know that. Awesome.
That's it. It took me a while to figure out what he meant too. That's what are you.
Here's another email from Kath Devon. Kath says, listen to Stickman and Stickman 2 today. A gang, such great songs and such great music always makes us groove. Thanks for all the great music. Kathy D. and Richard W.
Just as said Kathy D. and Richard W.
Yep.
Okay.
You know them?
And fans, which is awesome because the Stickmen was a great little band I was in. Absolutely. I'm proud of everything we did.
Kath Devlin.
Oh, Kathy Devlin, Kathy. Why do you do W? Hi, Richard. I didn't know your last name was W. I'm sorry. Kathy Devlin and I, we're in our first communion picture together. I've known her since I was 5. See, I have a lot of friends that have stayed friends with me for a long, long time. That's more important to me than any music story I could ever tell you. So, the older I get, the more I treasure every breathing moment that they're around. So thanks for touching base, Kathy. I'm glad I got your right email.
And you sure do have a lot of friends, because we don't ever recall having this many emails during our show with the artist song. But here's one more. Here's one more. I'm going to read you one more. Love listening to the program tonight. Great to hear Bernie's voice and music again. I played with Bernie in STEM back in the 70s. Great memories. Cheers. Do you know who that is?
Well, it's Dave Oldham or Gary Brown or...
Gary Brown.
Yeah, okay. Well, Gary. Hi, Gary. You certainly did play with me in STEM. We lived up at the farm together. Yeah. I don't even have to reminisce about Gary. Like I know Gary like it was yesterday. I'll never forget Gary. So, yeah, I have lots of stories about Gary, but my favorite one is that he was Bill Clinton's sound man. Went all around the world with Bill Clinton after Bill was president for a while, and he was his sound man. He traveled all around the world doing sound for Bill, and I thought that was so cool. And then, but also he was a great bass player, and Gary Brown, so far ahead of his time, he made speaker cabinets, ended up working and co-owning or something Westbury Sound, and made a very successful career out of what he's fantastic at. So thanks a lot for getting a hold of me, Gary. I love you, buddy.
And one more, I'm going to do one more, and then I want to ask you my favorite question I ask all the artists. This email says, I rarely play with other guitar players. Bernie and I playing together is so much fun. He listens and never overplays. Hopefully we can work together in the future. He's a great player and true gentleman, and that's Danny.
Danny Weiss. Holy crap.
Yep, you got it.
Make me cry. Do you know who Danny Weiss is? Danny Weiss player. Okay,
go ahead.
Guitar player for Rhinoceros, which is one of the seminal bands that I learned guitar playing from. Danny Weiss is playing. He also played with Lou Reed and Alice Cooper and Bette Midler. He was in The Rose, the movie with Bette Midler, and he's a legend. He's up there with Alex Lifeson and all these guys. He's just an amazing man. And I got to play with him, and he says something like that about me. Like, if he can only picture me in my buddy's living room when my buddy came over to his place and put on the Rhinoceros record for the first time. And I went, I'm going to learn this whole album. I don't care how many years it takes me. And that album came out in probably 1969, and I'm still trying to learn it. I'm about halfway through the first side now. That's awesome. I actually got to play with it. Well, check this out. I got to play. Rhinoceros got back together for a reunion after like 50 years or something, right? And we played at the Blues Festival in Kitchener, and I got to play the second guitar. Like, there were two guitar players in Rhinoceros, and Doug, the other guitar player, wasn't available. Thankfully, I'm glad that he got all those letters telling him that he'd won the lottery and he had to go to Nigeria, because they worked. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, I got to play all of his parts, and we slayed, we killed. And I love it every time I play with Danny. And it's the same with Danny. I've only played in a few bands with two guitar players. Danny McBride is one, and the late, great Brian McLeod. And I've been blessed with all three of these guys, because they all had huge ears, huge taste. And I learned tons from them. So there you go. Thanks for coming for the email, Danny. All the best.
Thanks for the email. Thanks for the email, Danny. Just let's speak briefly about something that you just did recently with Alex Lifeson from the band Rush. Tell me about that, man. That is just so exciting.
Yeah, well, Alex and I met. He was the co-owner of the Orbit Room in Little Italy in Toronto, and he and Tim Notter. So Tim Notter, sorry, Tim. But Tim and Alex opened the club, whatever. So the Dexters, the band that I was in, Lou Pomani put it together. And so me, Peter Cardinelli, Mike Slosky, and myself. So we played, and then Alex came up one time, and, the place used to always be full of people just waiting, because they'd heard that Alex co-owned this club in Toronto, and people would fly in from all around the world just peeking their head in and spending the night at the club, just on the off chance that he might poke his head in, right? So, and needless to say, we had to step up our game, because whenever he wasn't there, we had to make it worth their trip from Brazil or wherever they'd flown from, right? So we ended up being quite the good band. So, but anyway, Alex came up one time, and the minute he walked up on stage and we started playing together and gave each other big smiles, it was like we got each other immediately. So we're like brothers. Like, we played in all the crappy bars in Southern Ontario and stuff when we were cutting our teeth in bands, and we're the same age, and we're both fans of each other, and mostly as human beings, but also as guitar players. So, but we like the personal touch the best. So yes, he's awesome. So we just finished doing an interview with Brad Barker on Jazz FM. We did it in December, and it came out really nicely. And if you go to my YouTube page, I've got it on there if you want to listen to it. And Brad's a great interviewer, such as you are, Barry, too. So thanks.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And I love hearing these stories. They're just, oh
my God, I could tell you, I got lots of them. Yeah.
I know you do. And my favorite part of the show.
Yeah, I'm not famous, but I got a lot of friends who are, right? So.
My favorite part of the show is always to ask the artist, tell me a crazy story that's happened to you. I know you have so many, but something that stands out either on stage, on a tour bus, on a plane in a different country, something crazy that's happened to you.
I got to tell you one, I guess. Geez, I wish you would ask me to prepare for this, because I'm going to kick my butt the minute I hang up. But I could start from yesterday, the crazy stuff that happened to me. But let's see. When I was playing with Rain in Kitchener, we played at a place. You're in Oshawa, or your producer is, or something. But there was a funky old hotel called the Janasha Hotel there, and so Rain was playing for a week down in the basement there. And so we had rooms upstairs, and I used the word rooms loosely. So anyway, they had ceilings and doors. Anyway, close enough. So this weirdo guy was like coming to the show every gig, right? And so we were watching him. He kind of looked like the weird guy in the crowd, whatever. So he ended up, coming up to us when we were sitting at the band table during a break or something. And we were just starting to learn how to play Do It Again by Steely Dan. Their first album had come out, but we had just heard the single. We bought the 45 and we were learning how to play it. So, and we were talking about Steely Dan, and he goes, I've got their album. And it's like, and we went, what? So he goes home. And after the gig, there's a knock on one of our doors, and we open it up, and there's his name. He shall remain nameless, but his name was Rick. So anyway, we opened up the door, and there he was with a Seabreeze portable record player and this album under his arm. So he puts the record on. We freaked out. Like if nobody out there has heard the first Steely Dan album, it's like, to me, the best one they did. So it's awesome. So we listened to that and went, oh my God, we are changing direction right now. We're going to learn all these tunes, and it changed everybody's mindset. That album was really, really, really important for us guys in Rain. So anyway, so Rick, anyway, I think we're on the 4th or 5th floor of this hotel. And so he kind of not endeared himself, kind of latched on to us, I guess you'd say. So we just left him in the room while we went down, had to play another set or something. So we were going to listen to the album again during the next break. So we get back upstairs and the record's playing, but there's no Rick and the window's open. And so, we're looking around, we're thinking, he went down the hall to have a pee or something. And then, so it's like, the window's open, eh? So we go out, we look out, and there he is. He's standing on the ledge of the 5th floor of the Janasha Hotel, like nothing's wrong. Oh. And it's like dark and everything. And we're crapping, like we don't know how to get him in, whether to, tell him to jump so we can keep the Steely Dan record, or, or try to coax him back in. So we decided to coax him back in. And that's I guess I'd call that a weird story, but you're just going to have to put up with that one. But you'll
absolutely crazy, Bernie. Absolutely
you'll read the
crazy.
rest of them, and the rest of them will be in my book.
Awesome. There you go. So, folks, please check out Bernie LaBarge's stuff online. You have your website. Let's tell the folks how they can get to your website
please.
and whatnot.
Thank you
and check
very
out
much.
Your stuff, bud.
Yeah, you can go to the Bernie LaBarge page on YouTube, and you can also go to BernieLaBarge.com, and it's LABARGE, LaBarge. And that's a good start right there. That'll lead you to Wikipedia and a bunch of really neat videos and stuff. So I'd love it if you give it a look, because I've got tons of great photographs of my old bands and great things. I'm a pack rat, so leave it at that.
Yeah, so am I. Good for you.
I'd also like to thank my friends for listening tonight, because I know I sent out a mass email, and I know a bunch of them, like old relatives and my family, and it's just awesome. Like I've got some really neat people that are listening to your show, and I have a feeling they probably enjoyed listening to your tunes as well. So thanks for having me, Barry.
Thank you for that. Before we go, our producer, Gary LaBarge, is also a very prominent musician and successful musician. And there's a segment of the show I always do called, "Well, Gary LaBarge, what do you think?"
I think, wow, I'm a new fan. I'm sorry I haven't been a fan in the past, because I was born and raised. I was born and raised in New York, and I didn't immigrate to Canada just a few years ago. So, but I love your stuff. It's very commercial. I love the guitar sound, like that Marshall's 80 kind of distortion that you'd have there with the bass. It's so well mixed, that bass and that heavy crunch guitar sounds so good. But it's very commercial. Love it. Nancy reminded me at the beginning, some of that distorted Hammond stuff reminded me of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer or Deep Purple.
Deep Purple.
Yeah. And basically the vocals and the melody of Nancy sounds like Blood, Sweat and Tears to me.
Awesome.
The way that it moves, the way the dynamics of it, the way the melody is. I love the music. I think, Bernie, I think it's fantastic. And you and I are about the same age, so
fantastic.
We do everything from the old school, which a lot of the newer people, so from the 90s on per se, they don't really understand the way it used to be with analog stuff and doing a million takes, and they just, everything's cut and paste now. So good luck, stay healthy.
Thank you, pal.
And I hope sometime to see you when you perform.
And if you're in the Oshawa vicinity, just tip your hat. Is the Janosh still there? Do you know?
That's not here. That's a little bit east of here, about 45 minutes. It's not in Oshawa.
I wonder if it's still
It
standing.
is. It is.
It was barely standing in 72. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. And I also, if I'm still on the air, am I?
Yes, you are.
Yep.
Well, it's I'm just gonna say that I've had both my vaccinations and my booster, and I wish that everybody would seriously consider doing that. I have friends that are in ICU right now. I have friends that are recovering from COVID. It's hit very close to my household, and I just want people to be careful and don't be selfish. Just because you think you're healthy, it doesn't mean you can't give it to somebody else. So there you go.
Very good.
Bernie, thank you so much
Thanks, Barry.
For coming on our show. It's been an absolute honor. I mean, what a music career you've had. I want to continue to follow your progress down the road, stay in touch, and get you back on the show in a year or two and see what you've recorded and what you've done in the future. Again, an absolute honor to have you on the show, and thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you so much, Barry, and thanks again to Dave Parkins for introducing the two of us.
Absolutely. And to the listener, I say thank you for being here. Always dance and sing, and let the music bring your soul to the surface for all the world to see. Until next time, have a shuffle your feet kind of week, and good night. You've been listening to This House of Musicians radio show on Reality Radio 101.